All right. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited. Today, I'm talking to my really good friend, close friend, Giuliano Giacaglia. He is a senior engineering manager at Transcend, a startup focused on privacy. And recently, Giuliano finished his book about uh, artificial intelligence. It's called Making Things Think. And he covered a lot of the topics on different types of architecture and the history and a lot more, and in a very simple, very intelligent way. I'm really excited about it. Then in general, I love talking to Giuliano about technology and the economy. I think he read a ton about it, and he has a lot of unique opinions. And yeah, super happy about it. And yeah, uh, very excited about it. Thanks so much for finding time, Giuliano, and
Yeah,
congrats on moving from San Francisco to Austin. How are you doing?
yeah. I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's always great to talk to you. Um, I love your shirt, by the way. I mentioned before the Brazilian shirt representing.
Brazil. I love Brazil. Yes, I went there. Brazil and California. I went there for 2 months last year, just exactly a year ago. Had a really amazing time. I don't know, something about me and Brazilian culture just matches so well. I felt like I could live there. Maybe I will at some point.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll leave. Uh, I'll move there at some point as well. I mean, I'm from there, but yeah, maybe I'll move back at some point. Uh,
Floripa.
yeah, exactly.
I like Sao Paulo actually. It's unusual. I felt
Yeah,
unusually like home because it was like a completely foreign city. And I had so many stereotypes. There's always so many bad stereotypes often before you travel. And then you go there and it's like the feeling is completely different.
that's funny.
Sao Paulo is
Yeah.
great. All right. So since you thought so much about I wanted to ask you first, what do you think of ChatGPT?
I
Also the
mean,
hype days.
it's a really interesting tool, right? Like I think it's an interesting product. Chats have been used like for the longest time, chatbots. You have Siri, you have, Google Home and things like that. And ChatGPT is just like an evolution of that. So they they apparently they use, GPT-3 first to implement the first version. That's what I've seen. And then they improve GPT-3. GPT-3 is like the neural network, and it has like a lot of parameters into that. And then they just increase a lot the number of parameters, meaning the size of the neural network, they increase a lot of the data, the amount of data that's used. So you could increase the size of neural network. Um, and it's just like a very smart chat bot, and people really love using it. It's like one of the fastest growing products, quote unquote. Um, but it's interesting because, in terms of the data is available to everyone out there, right? And a lot of it is compute, like a lot. Obviously, OpenAI has the best engineers in the market, um, but um, but we'll definitely see other companies implement similar chatbots and similar things like that. I think the question is like, what does this imply to society in general? And then we can dive into that.
Couple of questions.
Yeah.
I've got to ask you for the one like a stack. I mean, but there's Anthropic also, and DeepMind, Google Brain Alphabet. The engineering level, I feel like it's on par roughly. Is that how you feel in terms of like engineering talent, or you feel like somebody's ahead significantly?
I mean, OpenAI has definitely the best engineers in the market, but in terms of the neural networks like, if you think about it, you don't need that many engineers necessarily to build these neural networks. You may need, 5 or 10. Obviously, like there are parts of the organization that are working different things that are not necessarily related to improving the neural network. I mean, you like OpenAI also is improving their API access. So, there's like millions of people. If there are millions of people interacting with a product, that's harder to serve than, if you have 100 people or 1,000 people. So that's also part of improving the product, and there are engineers working on that as well.
How do you estimate actually that they have the best engineer? I personally don't like the word best, but like, how do you estimate the level of engineering from DeepMind? Just looking at their papers published, you read the papers and then you see the levels of papers.
I mean,
there's a lot of good
DeepMind,
engineers at DeepMind, I'm sure.
yeah, I mean, DeepMind also has great engineers. I mean, OpenAI compared to DeepMind, it's hard to say.
Okay.
But OpenAI compared to like big tech, like OpenAI and DeepMind might have, the talent is more dense there. So like you can see from the results, right? Like big tech is not necessarily releasing ChatGPT or not releasing AlphaFold or whatever. Like DeepMind and OpenAI both are releasing really cutting edge models like that the results speak for themselves, right?
Sure, but there's this point that Google had this Lambda, like for a while now. Like, I mean, I'm learning it from public sources. So had for a while, and supposedly it was super good. It's just that they thought it was not ready enough, not good enough to be published. But OpenAI just decided to publish, even though it was raw.
Yeah.
And then there's this like, oh, actually, Google's one. I think it's coming from Googlers. Google's ones is either better or on par
Yeah,
as
I mean,
OpenAI. Then yeah, what would
Google is a huge organization, right? So like their AI team, like they definitely have some models there that are on par. Microsoft as well, but like if you look at density and the amount of products that OpenAI releases, it's like, oh, OpenAI released DALL-E 2. Google released Imagen like right after, right? So like they are like there are teams inside Google, for example, that can do as well as OpenAI. And as I mentioned, like a lot of these neural networks, it's a lot about compute. Like obviously some of them use some novel architectures like transformers and things like that. But a lot of it's like compute, which is like basically means spending money to train these neural networks. There are like things that OpenAI does really well, but these things, they get commoditized, I think, over time. So like Microsoft released a model that was like 10 times bigger than GPT-2 the same year or the year after that OpenAI released GPT-2. So in terms of like, can other companies and organizations do the things that OpenAI and DeepMind do? Yes, 100%. And we're gonna see more of that. Like ChatGPT is just the first chatbot. I'm pretty sure that this year or next year, but most likely this year, there's gonna be a like open model that's released by someone, like some other organization that's on par with ChatGPT. It's just the incentives, the way incentives work.
Yeah. So you wrote an article which I thought was amazing about how transformers work. I think in general, very good at explaining. Can you please explain? I think again, some people know how transformers work in details, but I think most people don't. Can you please try to explain in simple words what is a transformer, right? Because it's like at the core of a lot of this current innovation. And what is the difference between transformer and GPT-3?
Yeah, so like first of all, let's talk about neural networks. Like the way neural networks work, they're basically a simulation of how our brain works and how our neurons connect to each other. So like a neural network it's basically a mesh of neurons. So you have, mathematical representation of neurons, and that's not too hard to represent in a computer. And then you have these neural networks, which are, these combinations of like the simulation of neurons. And one of the things that people notice is that whenever they're training these neural networks, they want to show some sort of behavior. And one of the things that people are trying to do is to do translation of text. And so like whenever I'm speaking something, I can say, the chair is beautiful. It is green. And it is pointing towards the chair, right? The thing about transformers is that it can represent what is this called attention, or that relationship between the word it and the word chair. So it represents that inside the neural network. And it's a really good way of doing that architecture where you have links between words. And so like the transformer is a really, really good model for doing things with language. And that's what we've seen. And it seems that a lot of the things that we do in the world are related to language. But GPT-2 and GPT-3, there were models based on transformers that had more and more parameters, more and more artificial neurons. And they were based on this transformer architecture that uses this thing called attention, that's basically pointing towards words so that you can represent this relationship. Because let's say we're translating, right, from one language to another. You really need to know what it refers to whenever you're translating, because if it's the chair, it may translate to one type of word in French or in Portuguese. If it refers to, let's say, an animal that, maybe it was in the sentence before, it may translate to something else.
How does it learn the relationship that it relates to a chair and not the word beautiful?
Yeah, right? I mean,
there's like a lot of statistics. Can you tell me?
Yeah, so I mean, the crux of it is basically you have this model and you're trying to train this model, you're trying to train these weights. And the way they do it is like they feed a lot of sentences and it tries to predict the next word in a sentence. So like the chair is beautiful, it is, and then it's trying to predict, let's say it's green, or it is blah. Blah doesn't make, or like, let's say something that makes no sense. It is alive. Like a chair is not alive, right? And so like alive wouldn't fit in this sentence, let's say. And so like what the model is doing is that it gets a lot of sentences and it's trying to predict the next word. And then like it compares with whatever text it's in the internet. And so it updates the weights of this attention and of the whole network in such a way that it's trying to maximize, is basically trying to predict the exact word that they saw in texts. And so what does that really mean? It means that it's learning what it's on the internet. So it's going to represent what basically people say on the internet. And in some ways, it represents what the average person may think, which is like, sometimes it says like things that are not necessarily good or not necessarily, that maybe are not necessarily good, but they represent what probably the average person would think, because it's basically trying to match whatever the internet is saying, and so we talk about GPT-2, GPT-3, and ChatGPT is basically this conversational interface that uses this model that's basically, trying to predict the next word whenever you ask a question. So it probably, I don't know the exact workings of ChatGPT, But because you have so much text on the internet, you may have some conversations, and in that, we can kind of predict based on conversations that happen, like a sentence can also be a question, like can include a question, right? And so that's kind of basically what's happening behind the hood.
Nice. And sorry, quick thing. So transformers, I understand more now. And transformer and GPT. What's GPT is a trained version, one trained version of a transformer.
Yeah, it's one model based on transformer. So like there's GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, and it's a specialized kind of transformer that has a certain number of neurons, a certain number, a certain a certain number of neurons. So GPT-3 has a lot of more parameters than GPT-2. So what it actually means is that smarter, because when you have more parameters, more neurons, it performs better in all types of different tasks. But what really means is that it's predicting the word much better than the next word, is predicting it much better than the previous version.
Awesome. I love the explanation. Okay, so I'm gonna jump into the future, but I think it will help us connect the modern times. So the future is obvious. A lot of the I think humanity is talking about it. Is this artificial intelligence, right? That's gonna be like, super intelligent, smarter than human, in quotes, in every way. And there's this more technical term called AGI. My understanding is there's the idea is there's narrow intelligence. Let's say it can play chess, or it can play StarCraft, or it can predict the next word, translate from English to French. And there's general intelligence, kind of like human, where it can do any of those, right? Just like human can, learn to wash dishes, play a violin, whatever, dance, tango, all of these things. And they called it AGI, and a lot of people are very excited about it, wanna become first to create it, and some people are really scared of it. A lot of people, I think, are very scared of it. So what do you think of this term AGI? I know a little bit. I think that's super. I love your opinion about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, like I agree that there might be models that perform better than humans in every single task. And so that means in chess, in playing whatever, playing music, in doing this, doing that. But I feel a lot of what people claim to be, to get to AGI and get to this utopia, it's a lot of marketing there. Like it seems that people are just replacing God with like, this entity that's gonna be all encompassing and like does everything, and like it becomes this monster that takes over everything. I mean, we have computers that play chess better than humans for a long time now, right? And computers have been passing the Turing test. It's just that most people don't know about it. Like ChatGPT makes it clear that computers pass the Turing test, because if you put ChatGPT and a person, it's going to be pretty hard to tell if it's a person or not on the other side. There are even like memes about it, like that you're talking to ChatGPT and it's actually a person on the other side.
Yeah, I don't know if but there is a definition of Turing test that like Ray Kurzweil came up with, right? And I think I think it's probably not yet passing because it sometimes does funny things.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's also too smart to be like, you will know like, oh, it's just writing too perfectly. And I'm not really sure that. Well, it depends on the Turing test how you actually like define it in details. But I personally think it doesn't actually pass, depending on who you are and how you set it up.
Yeah, I mean, the Turing test defined by Turing has been run every year in England, and I think like they passed a few years back, like the average person couldn't couldn't tell the difference. With ChatGPT, I bet you the average person can't tell the difference as well between ChatGPT and a person. I get your point, but that put it, like, let's put that aside, right? Like we have game engines that are better than humans for so many years, and they're so much better than humans. What has changed in chess? Like, what can we say that changed in chess? I don't think much has changed. There are people that cheat in chess, right? Like there are people that there might be people that cheat on poker and things like that, and like writing essays to pass, an MBA class or something like that. But I think we should look at what can change a society. And like one of the things, like, oh, if I get to AGI, I can do everything much better than everyone else. Like I really doubt that's true. Like people, even if they had the recipe to success, they wouldn't follow it. Like people are so funny, right? So like I think AI is definitely it's a tool, and I really think it improves our efficiency of doing things. And we're gonna get to, like, we're getting, in general, if you look at GDP per capita, it has been increasing over the years. And like we've been doing better as a humanity over time. And AI is definitely gonna help us do a lot of things better. But then the question is, like, is it gonna make this utopia? And I think the utopia is like, it's more dependent on people than than in the tool itself. The tool is gonna help us produce more GDP, and it's gonna make us more efficient in so many different ways, in writing essays, in playing chess, in writing code, in writing movies. But like a movie, I mean, you can have a bot write a movie, right? But like humans still like to express themselves, and they still like to have their own voice, and they still like to have their own brand and their own voice. Like people like to create. And I don't think that's gonna go away. I think if you look at the GDP percentage wise, and over time in the US, for example, has been more and more spent in entertainment. And I think that's just gonna grow. Like people travel more, they play more video games, they watch more movies, and that's a percentage of the GDP. That's why Hollywood's so big, right? Like, because people like to entertain themselves. I think Hollywood, for example, it's gonna be completely distributed. Like I think Hollywood, as we know it, like the tech scene, like tech is going away from Silicon Valley, and I think Hollywood's gonna go away from Hollywood.
Yeah, it's a big one. I didn't think about it. So storytelling. So what's gonna happen with acting then? There's two parts, like actors and the actual scene, like filming the scene. You think most of it is gonna be virtual, like 90% of it or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you can have all different things, right? Like you don't necessarily need to have one rule fits all. I wonder, like, I think the question is like, is most of the video gonna be digital? Is it gonna be generated by computers? I don't know. It could be, but also like people like to act. And I mean, if you look at Mandalorian, most of the set was actually created by Unreal Engine, which is like this game engine, and was like they had a screen behind it, and then you had the actors in front. So you don't necessarily have to have these huge expensive sets, right? You can have a lot of computer-based movies, but like Pixar, for example, right? Like there's so many people working for Pixar, and it's an animated video, right? And you can do a lot without as many resources. So like I think we'll have a lot more creators outside of Hollywood, especially with animated shows and things like that. You may have, you know, like movies that are animated without, you know, that much expense, and we may have even like real movies that are all digital, and they are created by a guy in a computer, you know, in his pajamas. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's gonna be much easier to generate a whole movie just with one person, and there's gonna be all these actors, and maybe it's a game actually with like the whole universe, right? Gaming is a whole new, like another ginormous industry that's gonna explode, like
Yeah,
grow so much more.
and gaming has been growing over time, and it's just people like to do that. And you know, like there is this saying which I think it's quite it's not a saying, but like some people have been saying this, that you know, you'll have the world is going to be of narrators and maybe investors or something like that. You know, if you look at, you know, Silicon Valley, there are a lot of people, like you have angels that are investing in new ideas and things like that. And maybe that's, you know, that like a lot of more people are going to become investors, and a lot more people are going to become narrators, meaning they are creating, you know, environment in the digital world or even in the real world, right? Like a lot of like construction can be automated eventually, and you know, you can create these beautiful places like Disney, right? Like Disney created Epcot, and Epcot was supposed to be a city. Why can't you create, like, you know, new parks, new cities that are like designed the way a person, you know, like, or you know, someone would like to see? So like if you have robots that can do a lot of the manual work, so you can have that also. I mean, I think one of the things that we're gonna see more so, and I really think that we have been stagnant since the 70s, and I think it's a lot related to money, which we can talk about. But like if we have energy that becomes cheaper over time, like we could have like cars, we could have spaceships, we could have cities in space, we could have cities underwater, we could have, like, why don't we have, like, for example, traveling, right? Traveling through space, why does it suck so bad? And I
You mean
I
like
think
flying or?
flying, and I can tell what the reason I think it is. I think the reason is that it's expensive for the average person. Like the business class, like if for a user to have more space inside a plane, they need to pay a lot more, because part of the expense of our airline is having, you know, pilots, is having, you know, the people there, but also the jet fuel and things like that. If you reduce the cost of energy and you know, you reduce the cost for a lot of things, for everything, even like flying, right? Like the jet fuel, you reduce that. Like let's say you have nuclear powered batteries, so like you don't even need to have cities in space, which would be cool, you know, like Star Wars or Star Trek kind of stuff. But like just flying in a more comfortable manner would be nice, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic about nuclear fusion. Hopefully, it will come soon, because that's gonna decrease the cost, like much closer to zero. So I understand. I don't know how many orders of magnitude, but that could just unlock so many things, and yeah, could help. I know there's a lot of things, climate change, like help, like if that's a thing, that could help, like what's the word, like decarbonize or whatever Bill Gates is doing,
Yeah,
getting
I mean,
carbon emissions out of
I
the air.
I think we should be more ambitious. We should be terraforming Mars. We should be colonizing other planets and thinking about that. And I think we were gonna do it by end of the century. But yeah, like I agree with you that the point is, like, we could do a lot more things that we would like to, and you know, like maybe there are problems that we think are problems, like they wouldn't exist, with much cheaper energy. And then like being zero cost, I don't really think like if you have demand, is like the price is never zero. Like you need to like the supply of energy, you can increase a lot with nuclear, and like maybe solar, you can do it as well. Like what would be nice is to increase the amount of energy, and like not only energy production but energy storage. And I think there's a lot of work into that nowadays, like with battery powered everything. You're like all the companies have a big incentive to have the cheapest batteries in the market, and that's like a really really strong incentive to improve tech there. And it's like that's amazing.
What do you think is going to be expensive, right? So a lot of things are going to be cheaper, like intelligence, compute is going to be much cheaper. Creating a movie is going to be much cheaper. What do you feel is going to be really expensive?
I mean, like the things that, so like, for example, that's a good question. Like one example is that, like, for example, coffee, right? Whenever you have industrialization and when you expand an industry, having like a very personalized and nice, like how do I say, experience, then it's more expensive in terms of capital. But then the question is like, you can automate a lot of this, right? So I don't know, like, I mean, traveling from here to Mars might be expensive 50 years from now.
I mean, compared to now, it's going to be much cheaper, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like infinitely expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the amount of energy, right? Like one of the things that, for example, I was talking to Martin, I think JSTOR's Hall, who wrote "Where is my flying car?" And that's one of the things, like, why don't we have flying cars? And one of the reasons, because energy is expensive. Like that's one of the main reasons, because technically you can make it, like it's not too hard to make it, but then like you need to make it in such a way that everyone buys it. And like we could all have flying cars. Maybe we could have, we could all have rockets or something like that, like
There's going to be public rockets, private rockets, like a private jet.
Yeah,
private jet is going to be maybe different thing.
why can only Elon Musk have his own rockets? We should all have rockets.
That's a company in the future. That's cool. That's very exciting. Yeah, very exciting. I think the expensive part may be about like humans, because it might be still hard for a while to convince people, let's say women for some time, a lot of women, to have, many babies, right? It seems like where it's going right now. Maybe in the future it's going to be artificial womb, maybe, biological man is going to give birth, although I doubt that.
Yeah.
But artificial womb. But in general, I feel like the number of humans, as with current technology, it's going to be slow, and maybe something that's going to be expensive is like human attention, right? If you want human care, like talking to a human, like on the phone, right, versus talking to a bot, there's going to be a lot of bot interactions.
Yeah.
And you will say, I want a human, I want a human. So maybe that's something that's going to be much more valuable, like handmade stuff, and like somebody like self-expressing and making a thing. Like I make my own clothes, like it's going to be more expensive because let's say people know me. Telekomotov made this. It is, yes, there's AI made one. It's much cheaper, right? But there's the whole point that I made it. There's a lot of meaning around it. I put my attention to it. So maybe that's something that's going to be more expensive. Hopefully it will.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, there will be a Tilak brand, and I will definitely buy those shirts.
I actually ordered it. It's not a joke. It's actually making clothes now. It's going to be a brand. It's going to be launched soon.
I know it's not a joke. I'm buying it. I'm
Yeah,
buying
yes,
it.
you are. Okay, everyone heard he's buying. All right, and then last one about the future. We talked about, so I think this whole like AI and like jobs and economy, I think I'm with you. I'm very optimistic about it. I understand the fear. A lot of people have fear of like their job will be replaced and all this, but again, we were all, hunters and gatherers and farmers, right? At some point, now there's like so many jobs, and there's going to be even more jobs. I think the variety,
Yeah.
it's going to be crazy personalized jobs. Like Marie Kondo, Marie Kondo, the one she cleans people's houses. It's a crazy job, right? But you can probably do it in a like a automated way. But I think she's bringing a philosophy behind it, right? There's like spirituality. Um, so there's going to be, I think, a lot of jobs that we don't really think about it. There's going to be like Cambrian explosion jobs. But there's another one that people fear. There's, I think, two fears. First one is jobs. Second one is AI. I'm going to go there. AI is going to take over, right? And like some very smart people are worried about it, right? I mean, the biggest one, like the most famous one, Eliza Yudkowsky, who started Mir Institute, and then Elon Musk, I think, got influenced by him, and he started talking about the dangers of AI. And so that one, I remember the third fear, but the second fear is the AI will run out of the box, right? It will trick the human, exit the box, spread itself around the internet, and will find a way to control humanity so the humanity doesn't turn it on. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's a tool, and I think at the end of the we have nuclear bombs, right? And we haven't like killed the whole humanity with nuclear bombs. And nuclear bombs are like there are fears of nuclear bombs in the same way that we have fears about AGI and things like that. I worry more about humans than I worry about machines. But yeah, I mean, I think they can get much smarter. But I also think that we're very good at solving problems, we humans, more so than we think about. So for nuclear bombs, we know how to control it, right? And for AI or whatever, I think we can control it very well. I mean, the question is like, could it be kind of a virus thing that takes over and like you really don't have any control? Then maybe that's one scenario that things happen and get out of control.
I think they would say is this is the most important question for humanity, because most likely, let's say, like a lot of people think like, okay, most likely will be right. I think most likely we'll control it, but even the small percent chance that we will not will have tremendous impact for the rest of humanity.
Yeah.
And then they use this, they calculate the utility. I think it was Nick Bostrom from Oxford. There's like, imagine all the humans that could have lived in the future, right? If you mess up AI by a little bit, it just multiplies by all this quadrillion, zillion lives in the future. So it's really it's the most important question. So just by us discussing it now, it's like equivalent of saving lives of trillion humans. I mean, I'm serious, right? That's the argument.
I understand
because everything else is small, right? If we discuss like even world hunger or something,
Yeah, I mean, I love AI, and I think it's a very important part of computer science, and it's going to be very important. But I also think there are other fields that are very important, and like I'm not too worried about nuclear bombs spreading and like doing everything. We've built controls around nuclear energy, like we built controls around it. You can make yourself sound and be very important by sounding the alarm and like saying like, oh, the world's gonna end because of this and that, and people like to hear that because they like we have this instinctive thing that it's very animal based, like whenever you see a bunch of bulls or cows or animals in a herd, like, and then you may not even have a predator, but if one starts running, all the others start running.
Yeah, I see. I know the feeling. Even if somebody just runs towards the bus or something,
you want to run
anxiously,
too.
I feel anxious. Yes, but just to get a little more serious. But hypothetically, right? Like the difference. There's a huge difference between nuclear bombs and AI.
I
Because
don't know,
AI
man.
will be
Nuclear
able to
bombs.
persuade humans. No. Nuclear bombs cannot persuade humans and cannot hack computer systems. I think those two skills. There will be AI that can persuade the human and hack a computer system, right?
Yeah, I
The
mean,
idea is this, the girls go with. There's a utility function. It tries to optimize for something, watch time, whatever, next word, something you will try to optimize for, and we'll figure out like, oh, actually, to optimize for this, I actually need to like get out of the box, make sure I'm not turned off, right? It will. There's this. They show this deep mind. There's this animation of this. I don't know if you've seen the boat. There's this game with the boat, and it found a way to hack by like rolling around, and it hacked the game basically to get maximum points. It's but not by doing it not the way humans intended it to, but it found a loophole, right, to maximize the points. I think that's one of the fears.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, these scenarios can happen. Like, yes, there are some, nuclear disasters that can also happen. Like virus can also spread out. Like even, bacteria or like viruses in general can, kill like the whole humanity. And, like there could be an asteroid that hits there, and kills
Yeah, but
everyone.
that one is a lower probability, right? This one's gotta have like we gotta have super smart intelligence, right?
I,
And the difference
I,
between the virus that you can, if it's so smart, it potentially can, you know, persuade humans, right? It can
yeah.
persuade a Chinese, prime minister or whatever it's called. It can persuade Russian president. Can persuade. I mean, it's not they're super smart, Let's say some presidents,
Yeah.
they can be easily persuaded.
Yeah, I mean, I see the point, but I really think that we can create tools around it. Like we're really good at creating safety and things around the tools that we're creating. But yes, like there could be this scenario, and like I mean, then we're doomed. I mean, if an asteroid hits Earth, we're doomed. Like I don't really know what to do about that. Like I think companies building these tools are like they 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 are definitely going to create tools around that, because there's so much, like, because these machines are seeing like some things that people feel attacked by, like there's so much pressure from society, around some of these chatbots. And it's just because these chatbots are saying some things that are sensitive to some people.
It's
Like
overly sensitive. I asked a joke about Kyrgyzstan. I asked basically, please give a Winston Churchill quote about Kyrgyzstan. Obviously, Kyrgyzstan didn't exist then. And he's like, oh, we cannot joke about countries. It's like, come on. I asked for a quote.
yeah,
Yeah, okay, I see a point. You're an optimist. I'm an optimist too. I
yeah.
personally think like what we can do is there's people work on development. Some more people can work on safety. I don't know how many we need, right? Just it's more like just like sending a rocket. Some people work on safety and risk, right?
Yeah,
Just like
exactly.
rationally, not like in panic, but like rationally. Hey, like let's figure out how we can make it
I
safer
mean,
because the stakes are high.
yeah, I mean, if people are like launching rockets, there are people that figure out, how the rocks are not going to explode, right? And they are the same people working the company. Like if you're launching a rocket or if you're building a tool, you don't want the tool to explode in your hands, I mean, it could explode. It's like nuclear bombs. It could happen. It could happen. It can still happen. But like I'm very optimistic about the future. So
Right. Yeah. Good. I think that's a good point. Is all of those things could happen, really, yes. And I mean, you can increase the probability of decrease the probability of nuclear war right now.
Mhm.
If you really want to help the world, right? But yeah, I do think there's a difference between AI and nuclear. The stakes are, I think, higher. Okay. Anyways, I think we covered that. I'm gonna. This is the third one, which is Elon Musk, the one Elon Musk talked about, right? The story, I think, goes like this. He was very close with like Larry Page and worked like DeepMind, and he realized DeepMind seems to be likely to take over, and one company is gonna have way too much power. And then he, with a bunch of other folks, Y Combinator, actually started OpenAI. That's my understanding, because of this maybe fear that one company is gonna completely take over. And I think you have a very cool opinion about it, right? The winner takes all opinion, that you think it's not going to be winner takes all.
Yeah, I mean, like the company that we should all be afraid of is the company that I like the most, which is Tesla. Like I think that's the company that we should be afraid of. But if it's a company that's gonna generate something that powerful, because I think they're the closest to it. And so like maybe we should be afraid of Elon Musk. And,
No, I'm actually
and
very surprised. I was very surprised when you mentioned Tesla, because for me Tesla was like a niche, while Alphabet DeepMind was like by far ahead a while back. That was different. But can you talk a little bit why Tesla is going to be
I
ahead?
mean, they have, I think, the biggest neural network in production running like in the world, like in at least 1 million cars. Like their self-driving car is running, like, and cars are basically robots. They're robots on wheels. And so they have the biggest neural network running in production. Like Facebook and Google don't have it. They don't have the like biggest neural network. Maybe now ChatGPT may be the biggest neural network, but I would bet that Tesla, if ChatGPT passed, then like Tesla will pass them next year. You know, like it's just like they have such a strong incentive to have the best neural network, because having the best neural network means having the best self-driving cars. And like they're just starting with cars, and then they will have robots. Like I think Optimus, their robot, is like one of the least talked things right now that are going to be the most important products in the next decade. Like I think the robot's going to be a very, very important product, and it's going to be crazy the amount of development that we're going to hear in the next few years about it.
So yes, we can fix this problem. Okay, so the robot, I mean, in a way, it looked a little bit for me like a marketing stunt, right? Honestly, at first. And also, second reason is, I don't know if it actually makes sense to make a humanoid robot, right? Why not make a specialized thing for washing dishes, for elderly care, you know, whatever, baby care, all these things, like cooking, waiter. Isn't it better to just have specialized robots than a humanoid? Like
I mean, maybe eventually they will move to specialized things, but maybe making it a humanoid robot may be better for like at the beginning. So I mean, the question is like, is it just a marketing trick? I don't think so. I really think it's something that's going to be revolutionary. I think this is like much bigger than the iPhone. I think that's like the biggest product of this decade. Maybe if there's a nuclear fusion power, then that's bigger than that. But yes, like Elon was gonna find one market where this robot's gonna be very useful. So maybe it's like packaging, you know, Amazon boxes or something like that, or maybe it's something else that's like has a huge market, or like maybe it's helping with construction. But like they already have the biggest neural network, and they will have the biggest data center training neural networks in the world with like their like data center. So like they're gonna be, you know, like the biggest player in this game by far. Like Google, sure, like Google has like incentive to better their search engine, and like Facebook also has incentive to make the videos that it is showing to users better, like their recommendation using neural networks and things like that. But I really think that having robots, which are cars, like the best in the world, like will drive Tesla much more into the future comparatively to other companies. And then like what you're saying is like, okay, he was concerned. Can you say the question again about Elon Musk?
Yeah, so he was concerned that one company is gonna take over,
Oh yeah.
like Alphabet, likely.
Yeah.
And then he thought OpenAI should be open source, and it will distribute power among humans, and then everyone, like many people will have AI.
I mean, the thing about waves and things is that they usually tend to go on until they are stopped. So like, for example, Moore's law. Moore's law has been happening for so many years, and it's hard to say that it stopped. It didn't stop. Like Intel maybe didn't produce as good processors, but like Nvidia did, and now Intel is catching up. Like Apple started making their own processors because Intel wasn't making good ones. And so like Moore's law has been pretty consistent. And with computing and neural networks, it's pretty clear that we get neural networks that are much more powerful every year or two, and computing becomes much more cheap a year or two. What that means is that the models that were the best 2 years ago now are like available to everyone to run in their computers, basically. Like what was really hard to do 2 years ago with I don't know, GPT-2, which was like the earlier model. We're now in GPT-4. You may be able to do in your computer, for example. And a lot of companies can actually train these neural networks because computing gets cheaper, and they get more access to computing, and also training these models. Like there are advances in software, in the way you train. You become more efficient in training in the software. You become more efficient in hardware. So like the advantage doesn't last too long. Like the advantage really, and so like I think the question is about data. If you have proprietary data, then then you can be much ahead of the game. But like for this sort of intelligent systems, like it's really hard to say, oh look. And that's why I say, look, Tesla has it's the most likely. If we should be afraid of something, we should be afraid of Tesla, because they will have robots. Like what other company has 1 million robots right now running, across, the US and other countries? No other company has that.
Yeah, but isn't it harder? Let's imagine there's a software engineer and a truck driver. Isn't it harder usually to be a software engineer, right? And then whoever creates the software engineer AI is way harder than this one, which is Tesla self-driving AI. Like whatever what's it called, like codecs and all of this GPT-like technologies that will replace not all of the software engineering job, obviously, but like a lot more. It may look easier. You may not know what the tree looks like, but it will be like harder in a way, smarter.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of coding and code out there. I think code is just a way to talk to machines, but like I don't think there's anything special about codecs or whatever. I think a lot of people can reproduce making software developer models, and so like I think the question about having a an all-encompassing like model that only one company has, I think it's really hard. Like I really find that really hard to see.
That's the AGI that people talk about, right? It's all-encompassing model that can
I
trade
mean,
stocks, persuade humans, play chess, all this.
I mean, if you have someone, like you have computers that beat the best chess players, right? And like, what is the advantage of having the best model right now? I don't think there's an advantage for people, right?
Yeah. My example was, if you have a persuasion AI, you can persuade other people to join your company. You can persuade the most talented engineers
I
by
mean,
knowing their traumas,
you
childhood
don't
traumas.
you won't need engineers by that point. But like I really think that people can be persuaded by not so smart, by other people that are not so smart, right? And so
Yeah, but you could do it at scale, right? You can like boom, and then LinkedIn.
I mean, I doubt that's gonna happen, but we'll see.
It's gonna be persuasion AI, I guarantee you. I guarantee you. It's all the first use cases. Because I mean, it's gonna be used for, first of all, scams, right? It's gotta be like all the old people probably gonna be scammed. I mean, but the good thing is, again, we're optimists. There's gonna be somebody who will create this critical thinking AI, which will catch scams and all this. It's gonna be way more important to use this big technology probably, right? Because if you don't, there will be so many attacks. The attacks are going to be much smarter. Scams are going to be way smarter because they can generate like your fake mom, fake uncle video and all that. Right? It's very important to have like on this side like a protective barrier, probably provided by one of these big companies. All right. To sum up, maybe let's cover a couple more topics from our list. So what are some of the other companies you're excited by in this space?
In AI?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I like Tesla, I like NVIDIA. I think like one of the interesting questions as well is like how you can personalize everything, and we're seeing retail. Shein is basically, personalizing clothes and things like that you find in the app. But like you have personalized videos and personalized ads, and I think Facebook, for example, is playing to that. And I think, in some ways, I think with Instagram Reels, it's basically blocking TikTok growth, and I think that's interesting. But
yeah, let's talk about it, because my intuition says that TikTok will keep dominating. And then I made kind of a prediction, arguing with you on Twitter, that I think in like 2 years or 3 years, something, you will still have more usage. I think there's some metric that I came up with, but basically you will still have more usage than Reels. And then you think Reels gonna be by far more dominant in some important metrics. Can you talk more about it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think what matters the most for these videos is the recommendation engine, and the format. Instagram just copied it, and like they had more users to begin with. I don't know about right now, like if TikTok right now has more users than Instagram, but if you look at the recommendation, if you look at Facebook is so good at doing things. Like it's really crazy. It's like, they're really best in breed company, and like I wouldn't like to compete with Zuckerberg. I intern at Facebook, and I know how, like, how competitive that company is and focus. I mean, when Google Plus launched, there was Mark Zuckerberg was basically, reciting the words of like a Roman emperor, saying we must destroy the competitor. He may be not saying that right now with TikTok, but I'm sure he's thinking about it. He's like, I'm gonna crush that competitor.
There's one word, one adjective I had to use to describe Mark. I think it probably would be
Yeah.
that. Based on everything I heard publicly and through other people. Yeah, it's funny. He gets a
And
lot of motivation from it, probably.
yeah, and so like they are buying so many GPUs, and they're making their AI system recommendation system so good. It's gonna be the best in the market. They have the deep pockets to finance creators, so like they also have contacts with like companies to fund with ads and things like that. So like they're gonna pay the most for creators, which for creators that matters a ton. And second, they will have the best recommendation engine. So like I really think it's like a good flywheel. So I really think they're gonna be the best in the market, you know.
Yeah, I mean, unless TikTok keeps innovating, which I don't see too much. Because like product-wise, I personally like TikTok a lot more. For example, like if I want to find that song, make a TikTok video, and I like want to find the song, it's way easier for me to navigate the product. If I want to do it with Reels, I just drop. I'm just like, okay, I'm just not gonna do it. Personally, again, my personal experience. I product-wise, I personally think right now TikTok is a little bit ahead. But I get your point that there's a lot more than the product, right? There's all these advertising partners, there's ability to knowing how to deal with them, creators network. Which I don't know how good TikTok can be, dealing with their creators. So it's about speed of innovation, and I guess looking at TikTok now, you can already see how much they innovate. So maybe if they change, but you basically big believer in Zach's business abilities.
Yeah, I've seen him close, and he's like very focused.
Yeah, I mean Meta in general, like I think is like a long-term bet in a way, a little bit long-term, not too much. But that field is going to be just like it's a green field, right? It's just going to move in. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be Meta territory probably.
Yeah.
We'll see. Sometimes I go back and forth. So you're optimistic about Meta as well.
Oh yeah.
All right, all right.
Yeah, we'll see. 5 years from now, we can check on that, because that's a very easy. It's very easy to check.
Yeah, we'll look back at it. All right. Anything else you wanted to mention about AI? What excites you, the future, what you would want to see happen?
Yeah, I mean AI. Like I really can't wait for ChatGPT 5, and like I mean ChatGPT is based on maybe GPT 3.5 or GPT 4, so maybe the next version of the chatbot. But I'm very excited for video creation and image creation, things like that. I really think media. I really want Hollywood to be out of Hollywood. Like I think there has been a monopoly for
Let them
some.
stay. It's comfortable. Really
I
nice.
think there has been a monopoly for so many years. Like you have 4 big corporations, or like a few big corporations, and not much competition, and then you end up with movies like Avatar, which are like amazingly technically done, but the story, like I think you could have a lot of cool stories presented in the world that are not necessarily presented right now. There are a lot of Bollywood movies that I'm pretty sure there are very imaginative people everywhere that don't have the resources, but eventually if it becomes cheap enough, then you can create really cool, interesting stuff. And you can see with Netflix released that it was a Korean TV show, Squid Games, and it became viral. And it's Korean, like we will see a lot more of that type of thing going forward, which is going to be very interesting.
Yes, Kyrgyzstan movies coming soon.
I would love to
Netflix,
see that. I love to see that. Yeah.
They will. I mean, honestly, just can't like living in Kyrgyzstan. I see it happening from within because I see all the young people with like amazing ideas about VR, about illustration, animation. I see it there, and like super young, they see everything, all of this. Like, I mean, this is gonna happen. I see from just Kyrgyzstan, but like imagine Tanzania, Chile, all around the world. It's like people who like this. I love your vision of the future, Giuliano. Really, it's a place I would want to be. If it's like the Giuliano universe, I was like the place I would want to be in. It's really exciting, and hopefully, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks so much for your time. Again, once again, a huge pleasure.
Thank you.
Talking to you.
Thank you so much. It's always fun talking to you, and especially about AI. I love talking about it.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right, bye guys. Thanks for watching.